Good day, gentlemen. This is SwashbucklingSir here, and today we're taking a peek at Delver's Drop, a randomized dungeon crawler. Delver's Drop was actually funded over a year ago via Kickstarter. They gained twice the amount they asked for. They got $150,000, and they actually plan on releasing this game in the mid of this year, so mid 2014. I somehow doubt that at this point, but I got my hands on an early alpha prototype, and I'm going to show you this build and what's currently in the game, how it plays, and, well, okay, so let's do this. At first, we are the prison guard, so to speak, and we can decide to release one of the prisoners to play with the prisoner the game, obviously. So, character selection, a more polished or, let's say, complicated character selection screen. At this point, there are 4 characters here. So we have this whip lady, the rogue here with a little dagger, a warrior or berserker or whatever, and a mage. I'd like to show you, I think I'll start with a whip lady. Supposedly, the weapon you start with is randomized, but so far as I've played, and I've played a couple of runs, I don't think that's true, but maybe that's just planned and not done yet. So as you can see, this is us now. At the top screen you see I have 4 hearts and 1 shield. This is basically just the hit points. And we have a lash or a whip. Now we hit this switch, and this is where the game's name comes from. Delver's Drop. We drop into the abyss and try to defeat all the monsters down there. Now, currently, the game has 4 layers, or 4 depths. Maybe I should start with the actual goal. So the goal in this current build is that you just try to find a lever that is hidden somewhere on the floor, and when you hit this switch, the drop area where you started the level, or the start of the area, is going to open up, and then you can proceed into the next area. Currently, you can descend 4 areas, but the areas you can descend to are all the same. So, no different enemies, no progression in difficulty. And I highly presume that this is something that will change in the future. I mean, that's the idea of the game, is to, well, basically fight harder enemies later on, so if that wouldn't be the case, this would be kind of stupid, wouldn't it? But so, this is basically, I think, in progress. Same with boss enemies. Currently there are no boss enemies, but they plan on adding boss enemies for sure. Now, as you can see, I have basically this is my main attack, and I have also a shield I can use, which is actually not very useful, but when you press the shield button twice, you can dash forward and crash into enemies and deal heaps of damage. Oh, so there's the switch, that's nice. Also, currently, I don't know if that changes because I've not read about it, but currently there's just no incentive at all to explore the floor, because the rewards you get are just score and just a little bit of hit points, but they are mainly useless. So you don't have any incentive to actually explore. So let's say you're taking something like the Binding of Isaac, then you have the item room, you have the... oh, can I actually smash items down there? That's interesting. I wonder if I'll find them later on. So you have the item room, the shop, and you have things, you know, you want to find. Here you sometimes, as you can see here, find stuff, items you can use. I have a spur blade here, which I can equip, but it's really most of the weapons are worse than your standard weapon, and they are limited in uses. As you can see, the spur blade has a little 9 underneath it, which means I can only hit 9 times, and then I would have to switch back anyways, which is just a weird thing to do for me, because this way your whole progression is kind of limited, and there's just no point in actually getting used to use other weapons, because there's just no point in it. They are not much better than the stuff you are actually using. My whip has my lash has a huge range, and yeah, there's just no point to it. So what is this? Let's see. It's a point maker. And yeah, we can stab people with it. Okay, let's just show this for a second. So when I poke these guys, as you can see, it also takes a long time. So there's not really any huge use to it, especially that my lash has a huge area of effect and range attached to it, so there's just no reason for me to switch to something else. And while I'm on the topic of combat, I'd like to cover, as you can see, what you have observed basically in the last few minutes, is the combat basically consists of you hitting enemies that usually don't even notice you. So these bats here, they don't even care. Hello, hello, and then sometimes they do care. So the combat doesn't really feel skill-based at all, because essentially what you're doing is just running around and abusing the range you have, if you have it, and just stay away and smash the X button. That's just it. While I agree that, you know, the combat system compared to other let's say action roguelikes or real-time dungeon crawlers or whatever you'd like to call those games. Granted, the combat systems are not very interesting in The Binding of Isaac or Our Darker Purpose or A Wizard's Lizard. They are still more skill-based than this. So maybe it's just because the enemies are very, very dull at this point. They don't do much. There are a couple of enemies, as you could see earlier. There were these green poison rats, which explode after death. So, you know, that's something. And there are blue... Ah, there's one. There are these blue wizards, which actually shoot flames once in a while. And they can actually really hurt. But you can actually just throw the flames back at them when you whip the flame in the air, so missed that one. But, you know, there is just not really any point to blocking most of the time. So most of the time it's the best thing to just spam the attack button and walk into the enemy again and again and again. And additionally to that, which I would like to show here, is that the combat has another problem, I think, which is the positioning of the character. So as you can see, when I hit attack now, I'm not moving. But when I hit something like, you know, this fire, then I'm going to be pushed back. And, while this is also the case for enemies. But when you hit nothing, like this wall, then you are not pushed. So it feels weird. And by the way, the door actually also counts as something that pushes you back, which I found just intriguing. But it feels inconsistent, and it also leads to problems, which I will, once I die, I would like to show off the wizard class, which leads to problems, especially with this class. So, at the current stage, the combat is just not very interesting. Ouch, I just walked right into that. It feels very floaty, so because your character just hovers around, and it's not skill-based at all. It's just mainly smash the buttons, walk into the enemies, and smash the attack button. I mean, I could use the dash to crash the enemies, which is actually very strong. So this can actually be a cheesy strategy to dash into the enemies and just crash them over and over again, which it works fine. It's just, you know, if you want to skip time, basically. So these things you have to avoid. This is also very interesting. The one with a big Z on it, when you hit it, it bounces around. Which is, I'm going to show you this, which is actually interesting. It's impossible to avoid, basically. And it never stops bouncing. But that is intriguing. I don't like that it, you know, it's that quick and you can't actually properly avoid it. But I like that it's there. Now these are the switches I had to activate to leave this. So I don't even have to fight the bats here. Let's get this out of the way. Okay. So, yeah, as I stated, I think the combat system needs a little bit of work because it's just, yeah, it's just not very interesting at this point. Overall, as I stated in the beginning of the video, the release date is planned for, whether they don't have an actual date yet, they have a time frame, which is mid of 2014, and since it's May, and you know, with a stretch, May might be mid too, but you know, it doesn't matter. Even if it's in even if it's in 3 months, mid, this is just, I don't think it's enough time to develop all they want to do, because I haven't seen any of the other regions they plan, so I have just seen these enemies. I have not seen any bosses because they are not in there yet. There's no co-op in there, which they plan to do. There's no PvP in there, which they plan to do. So they plan to do, like, I think it's 4v4 PvP or something. It's not in there yet. So there's a lot of stuff to do. Oh god, these dark rooms. There's also something I don't like. While the game is really pretty, as you can see. Words. While the game is really pretty, especially when the lighting is actually in effect. And I love the art style, and also the sound is pretty good. It's not the best sound ever, but it's pretty good. I don't understand why games just always want to do these dark things. So I criticized that heavily in A Wizard's Lizard, the dark areas. I will criticize it here too. I love effects like this. So this is light, it looks pretty, and it gives enough of shadow and darkness and effects that it's intriguing in the corners. But there are these areas where there's just no torch at all, and that's just ugly and unnecessary because, well, it hinders the player and the player can't even fight it. Oh yeah, by the way, I don't think I covered these enemies, but as you can clearly see, they spawn little flames that follow you around, and they deal contact damage, while interestingly, I can't talk today, but that's okay, because I haven't made a video in quite a while, so I think you can forgive me that. So, while the little flames, while the little flames do contact damage, the big candle actually doesn't, as you could see right there. Which is, I think, interesting. I like that not every enemy has to have contact damage. I think that's a good thing. Okay. So I think this is the 3rd floor now. And I ranted, as you can see here, this is basically, I have a little glow around my character, but this is very dark, and I don't even know how this will turn up on YouTube. But this is going to be, yeah, well, I prefer if there would be a character that carries a torch, maybe, and just, in general, don't punish people for being old and having bad eyes, you know. I can relate. So, but I don't want to, you know, I don't want to mash on the game all the time. It actually is kind of fun. I just think it's going to have a really hard time, especially against upcoming games. I mean, it has a hard, I think, gameplay-wise, it's not as interesting at things that are out there already. Thus, it's going to have a really hard... Oh, I didn't want to drop that. It's going to have a really hard time competing with games that aren't even out. So, hint, Isaac Rebirth, which is going to be amazing, probably. So I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. I think there's two ways that the combat could be improved here, which would be grand, because apparently, no, not just apparently, this is what the game lives or dies from, the gameplay, you know? These roguelike games, this is what matters. The story behind it, that's just filler. What really makes or breaks the game is the gameplay in itself. And I think there are two ways you could do the combat in this game. One is go for an even slower and tactical combat, so make it basically a top-down Dark Souls. This would be, I think, amazing. And the other possibility is, if you don't want to do that, so if you don't want to make it tactical, then I think the game has to be more skill-based, but in a speedy fashion. So the game needs to feature more ranged attacks, more dodging, and reacting to enemies' attacks. So the enemy doesn't just try to run into you. Let's say this is me, this cask here. The enemy doesn't just want to run into you, but the enemy positions near you, and then he has kind of an animation, as you can see, as I have an animation when I pull back my leash, and this is basically the second you use to run around and hit him from behind or something. This would be the other thing I think that could work for this game. Oh, spiders. I feel there are two kinds of enemies in this current prototype that actually are dangerous. The wizard, so the blue ghost thingy, because the flames are really, really fast, so this is really hard to dodge. And the spider, because it's also really quick. But other than that, it's no harm. Not a problem. So, yeah. I think this is what they need to work on. The combat system is what needs to be improved. Also, they plan on adding puzzle rooms and things, but why don't you fall down? That's weird. Aren't they supposed to fall down here? Oh, now they do. Interesting. Okay. Weird. Yeah, they are supposed to be puzzle rooms, but I have not encountered too many. I've encountered one, I think, in an earlier run, so there's not too much of it. And if you want to see, like, randomization and puzzle rooms really well done, just take a look at Our Darker Purpose. That did it really well. It's a really good game, had great RPG elements in there. Well, you know, the combat is also just dodging ranged projectiles, but, you know, still. I just think this game, so Devil's Drop, is going to have a hard time if it doesn't bring new ideas into the combat area. Because the enemy design is rather uninspired. Ouch! And, you know, there's nothing you haven't seen before. Go away. So, well, if it would be out in this current stage, I would have a hard time recommending it. And as I said like 2 times now, it's hard to tell if, or, well, I don't think it's hard to tell if the game comes out in mid-2014, but because this is just, I think, unless the developer is holding back stuff from the press copies, there's no way this can be finished in 2 or 3 months. So, I think that's just... What is this? Oh, I found another lash, which has infinite uses. Okay. Whatever. Yeah, maybe it's also the random elements are, you know, there's just no... The exploration is not satisfactory in its current state. So basically what this early prototype shows is that they can create beautiful graphics, and they can create a rudimentary combat system, which I sincerely hope will be improved. By the way, there's no map. in this current prototype, so if you see me wander around aimlessly and trying to find things, well, that's maybe one of the reasons. Spider, go away. Yeah, and I think that is basically just what I wanted to cover in this. Now that I didn't die, I actually feel kind of bad, because I wanted to show the... As you can see, basically, the floors get larger as... Oh, ow, ow. That's not good. The floors get larger as you get down, and I highly presume that later on there will be different, you know, types of enemies, and the stuff's going to get harder when you're actually, you know, progressing, which is not the case currently, but that's just something that I probably haven't added to the game yet. No, don't poke me, go away. And there's also something I want to cover is that while you can push blocks around, and that they also, you know, call this kind of a physics feature. Yeah, as I said, I can't talk today. This is kind of a physics feature combat thing, which they, you know, you can push rocks into your enemies, and thus the enemies get damaged. Well, you know, that's just not very interesting. Again, what is this? This would have been a timing challenge, I presume. Or what is this? Can I just go through here? No, that hurts me very much. Okay. So this was one of the puzzles. I just didn't realize it fast enough. Oh, that's okay. Oh, is this another puzzle area thingy? Intriguing. I've not encountered this before. What does this button do? Is he just closed now? Oh no, I can whip it over there. Okay. Well, that was not too hard. So, calling this a puzzle is maybe a bit over the top. But again, I don't want to bash the game too much, because even though it's 1 year, 1 year in terms of game development isn't actually that much, especially when it's a small... Ow, hey, I didn't want to do that. Especially when it's a small indie studio, so I think we'll have to... Or I have to cut these guys a break and just let them finish their development process. Maybe it's just because I was expecting so much more when I saw the Kickstarter, and I was really hyped, so to speak. Don't believe the hype, never believe the hype. And yeah, just don't get hyped, probably. This is what the lesson should be. I was just expecting very intriguing tactical combat, and it's just not there yet. And oh, it actually was the last floor, so as you can see in the current state, usually it would go on. Kind of, I think. At least there is an endless drop mode. But now, I'm just ported back to the beginning. And it will take a second to show you the wizard. Because the wizard has an interesting problem associated with it. As you can see, the wizard has a ranged attack. But, like the other classes, the wizard always gets hit backwards, which is fine, but this leads to a problem when actually being in a wall. As you can see here, no problem, I can shoot. If I stand on the left side, and I'm going to be pushed into the wall, I can't shoot anymore. Same goes for the right, and for the bottom side. So that is obviously a problem, because this leads to you not being able to fight. So what you want to do, most of the time, you want to fight from the top to the bottom. And as you can see here too, while it works here, it doesn't work at the door. So that is obviously very irritating, and I think that's just something they have overlooked. They have overlooked the collision model and kind of messed it up. But I think that's something that's easily fixed. I just wanted to show it off that when the dev sees the video, he can see, oh yeah, we are working on that. This is already on the list. I bet a lot of stuff is on the list. You know, there's always stuff to develop. It's just something I wanted to show off. So, gentlemen, this was Delver's Drop. Thank you, as always, for watching. Have a great day. Goodbye.